Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. On this episode of the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, we host guest Doug Bates. Doug is the founder and owner of Bates Painting Company, a residential painting company based in Kansas City, Missouri, that currently does over $1.2 million in annual revenue. Doug discusses the journey he has had with Bates Painting Company since founding it 42 years ago, and he offers some very wise words of caution to help other painting company owners avoid costly mistakes that he himself has made on his journey. Doug shares an effective employee recruiting model he has created for his painting business and why he will only hire artists to work as his painters. If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Doug, thank you for coming on the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast.
Hey, Brandon, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Bates Painting Company.
Well, I could give you a thumbnail real quick. I started out as a painter. I ended up trying to run a painting company. I went back to the field as a painter, and then ultimately I figured out how to run a painting company. So that is a 42-year span. I started in 1979.
Wow, 1979.
Bates Painting Company. Bates Painting Company out of the Kansas City, Missouri metro area.
Nice. And what do you guys offer? You focus on residential, commercial? What do you guys do?
We're mostly you know what? A lot of people like to call themselves high-end residential, and I'm one of those people. But that mostly we're in the upper-end residential and some commercial, more tenant influence commercial, like maybe doctors' offices or banks or that type of on the commercial end.
Sure. Okay. And so you have been running this business for 42 years.
Correct.
And you and I were speaking briefly before we started recording here, and you said that you think a unique value you can bring to this podcast is how to do everything wrong.
Well, you know, I've listened to several of your podcasts, and I know a lot of people kind of started out and are what you call self-taught. Yeah. I am completely self-taught in both painting and business. Okay. So literally, my first 1979 is the year I graduated high school, and I had a job offer laying sod for $4.50 an hour. Mm-hmm. And my dad said to me, "Hey, how'd you like to paint my house for $250? This is the house I lived in for my dad, $250. That's my first job ever." And that's 1979, and I have never had another job. So it went from painting my dad's house to painting neighbors' houses. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't have a truck. I didn't even have a way to move ladders. I could only work far enough away to carry my own ladders. And then my dad ran an ad. This is way back in the old days. I'm like one of those Geico guys, like don't turn into your parents. I'm the guy you don't want to turn into, right? But ultimately, my dad ran an ad in the paper, in the local Kansas City suburb paper, Grandview, Missouri, for house painting. But we could only, all I supplied was the labor. I could only paint houses that had their own ladders. So that's as humble a beginning as you can get. And that was my summer job through college. And ultimately, one thing led to another, and I just kept doing it. And I've really never had another job. I tell people I've never been to a job interview. But then I think about the estimates that I do by the thousands, and literally I've probably been to thousands of job interviews, because really every estimate is a chance to sell yourself or sell your job, right?
Yeah, I always say, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, we don't have one boss, we have many, many bosses.
Exactly. Couldn't that be the truth? Yeah.
Yeah. So you started as a painter, then you owned a painting company, and then you became a painter. Now you own a painting company. What happened?
You know what? We're talking about 42 years here, so this could go a long time.
Yeah.
So I painted summers through college. I started college as an art major, and the artist in me really adapted well to house painting because I was really neat. I was good with I was good with colors, and I had a pretty good personality. And my dad was helping me sell jobs, and he had high integrity and I was raised that way. And so I ended up with just a lot of repeat customers after 4 summers of painting. My mom and dad encouraged me to get rid of the art major and change to a business major. So I ended up with a business major and an art minor, and got out of school. And I'm reminded of a quote from Picasso who said, as a child, I could paint like an adult, but it took me my whole life to learn how to paint like a child. And so I kind of adapted that to my business ability. And as a college kid, I could paint like a grown-up painter, but it took me my whole life to figure out how to run a business. So anyway, get out of school. I've got a lot of jobs coming from just the summer work that I've done. I decided to give it a try. Rather than get into business, I decided to be my own boss and continue my painting business. So by this time, I'm starting to work my way up a little bit. I'm out of Grandview by now. I have a truck. I can move ladders. I'm working my way into higher and higher end jobs, just basically organically off word of mouth around the Kansas City area. And for about the first 10 years, I'm in the field, hiring friends of mine from college and friends of mine that are working summers and whatnot. And I'm really teaching everybody as I went. And I really had I don't know if it's a calling or just a natural fit to doing really fine work. So we got a lot of jobs, and did better and nicer and nicer painting, and worked ourselves up over about 10-year period of me mostly in the field, to having a nice little well-positioned painting company in Kansas City, with probably doing about maybe grossing $300,000, but getting on high-end jobs and having a pretty small company. And with me, alongside one crew and then alongside 2 crews, and then splitting my time, and then just organically, we got the phone started ringing too much, and it was hard for me to do the estimates and do the office work and run the field. So about 10 years later, about 1990 probably, I got out of the field and started just managing a company.
Sure.
And then probably over the next 25 years, that company gradually started to do poorer and poorer work. And I feel like the analogy of the frog that is in the boiling water. I mean, my guy, I couldn't see it. I was friends with all the guys. I was making different hires. I was changing my position by running the company and not being in the field constantly. To be honest with you, our work just started to deteriorate slowly, very slowly. At this point, I didn't really have the ambition to be a painting company owner or to be a successful painting company owner. It was more just a job for me, and I was content to make enough money to pay the bills. And so my wife is my office administrator, and she's she's near me, and she's a big part of that story. So Donna, remind me. So I brought her on board about 7 years ago. So this gradual decline of my company, at which time we always did around $300,000 to $400,000 gross.
Sure.
So I was still able to survive and make the living that I needed to get by. But I was just managing a painting company. In fact, I wasn't that hands-on at all. Although I always ran it with high integrity. So we always followed through on all of our promises and made sure ultimately that the job was done right and the customer was happy. So there's a whole lot of stories in that period. But anyway, my wife comes on board. She had been in a restaurant business and was very successful. And she sold that business and was looking for a job and decided to jump on board with Bates Painting Company. And she kind of took a good look at my company and made some really hard and necessary suggestions. And she said, "Hey, you're a great painter, Doug. You do when you paint a house, it's art." She said, "These guys are just painting. They're just getting by. I mean, they're doing decent work, but not great work."
Sure.
She said, "You're the best painter in the company. You need to get back out into the field and let me show them how it's done. Let me take over the office." So, believe it or not, about 7 years ago, I went back out into the field after about a 25-year absence.
Wow. Emerged from retirement.
Exactly. I mean, I had always been working, but I was just managing and running a painting company.
Sure.
I wasn't in the field. So I really offloaded all that, even the estimates, to my wife, who, she's a very talented individual, to say the least. And I went back out in the field and started doing the kind of work that I was called to do, the art of painting a house, or painting, or selecting colors, or applying at various applications. And then we got rid of a lot of the old dead wood. In fact, we kind of reinvented the whole company down to 2 guys. Only 2 guys stayed when I went back out into the field, and then we just rebranded and rehired an entire company. And I'll tell you what I did is I went from hiring painters and trying to turn them into artists to hiring artists and trying to turn them into painters. And that, it seems like it might not, it seems simple, but it's hard to find the artists that are really committed to having a day job, that are really I don't know, not flaky. So I looked for artists high and low that had integrity, and then I brought in guys that had that. Every good painter actually is an artist. So it doesn't matter what company you're working for. If you're a good painter, there's an inner artist in you. I assure you of that. But I tried to find the guys that were artists like me, and then started to teach them how to become painters. And so now I'm back out in the field teaching again, and we just have completely rebranded. And at that point, in 7 years, I've gone from 300,000 to, we just cracked 1 million.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I couldn't be more pleased. I'm kind of a reluctant $1 million gross guy, but in fact, my goal was never that high. But my wife and a couple of my lead guys are saying, "Hey, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this." And lo and behold, we just started to, once we got some things figured out, things just started to multiply. And we've made a lot of good decisions and along the way, and then we've made a ton of bad decisions. So that's kind of where we are today.
So how do you, appreciate that background. It's quite a journey. How do you find artists? What's your criteria there?
That's a good question. And to be honest with you, I tried, when I used to hire painters, we'd go through more traditional means by which to find them. But we have really just counted on our guys bringing in their guys. So I've got a couple of really good artists that I think I was really fortunate enough to find. A guy by the name of Adam Peraldi and a guy by the name of Joe McClurg, and Mitch McDonald too. I don't want to forget to mention him, that came into me. I don't know if it was luck or hard work or integrity or prayer, but they came to me. And then basically we've worked by word of mouth to reach out to other artists that are actively looking to have a day job. So we've got some musicians, we've got a lot of canvas painters. We have everybody in our company is a more or less an artistic type, and so finding them, I think, has been more through the tentacles of other employees than through just random help wanted ads or Indeed or whatever.
Man, this is definitely interesting. Do you find that having this base of artists as your workforce Do you find they take more pride in their work? Do you find, what are the pros and cons of that kind of a workforce?
Absolutely, I think they take more pride. I think if you consider yourself an artist, more than likely you're going to take a lot of pride in, you're going to adapt to the art of painting. And so I think that's definitely the advantage. And the thing about my company is that we do a lot of the what you would call artistic painting. So we do some lime washing, and we do some Venetian plaster, and we do, back in the day I used to do a lot of faux finishing. We do some more of that now too. But I think as I brand the company as your home is our canvas, that's my painting company's tagline. I think the guys kind of really appreciate getting to work in some, you know, upper end homes,
Sure.
and being able to create finishes that are sort of uniquely ours, and that, nobody else in town is doing exactly the same, or nobody else in town is certainly doing any better.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I do you run into any issues, this idea of using your employees to help you find additional employees is not entirely unique. I've not heard it in this way of kind of, focusing on artists. This is unique. What are the pros and cons of that? Because have you ever had an employee leave, and then because it was your friend, his friend that brought him, well, then you lost two employees, or have you not had any kind of negative repercussions from that?
I haven't had a lot of negative repercussions, but you're always going to have that to a certain extent. So yeah, everybody doesn't work out. And yeah, I've lost a friend of a guy that works here. And then, but I'm extremely transparent company, and I'm 61 years old now. So I'm almost like a father to all these guys. And I just try my best to make them a better person. I care about all my guys.
Yeah.
I don't want to get emotional, but
Yeah.
and they know it. So if it doesn't work out, usually we can figure it out that it's just not meant for them, and move on to the next. But you kind of tapped into a ongoing byline for painting companies is that fine line between becoming friends with your coworkers and being their boss.
Sure.
And so you don't, now that I'm so much older, it puts me in a way better position. But it is difficult to work with friends,
Sure.
so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things you had mentioned to me that is important is your guys' tagline and kind of what that means to you and your company. Let's touch on that.
Well, your home is our canvas, and I think probably in the Kansas City area anyway. And I know I've heard other artists, I've heard other companies do this, but our specialty is color consultation and matching and sampling. So sure. I used to, for years, I thought that was a pain in the butt, because it takes so much time and it's just difficult. And a lot of painters will just say, hey, when you decide on your color, give it to me, and that's what we'll put on. Sure. But I'm not like that at all. I like to figure out what the customer is looking for, and then suggest colors that I think are in there, like a designer would.
Sure.
And then suggest the right sheen and the right placement of those colors. And I don't care, I shouldn't say I don't care how many samples I have to put up, because some people will test me. But I love to put up samples and make sure we get the right color and the right sheen and the right placement. That is what I embrace as an artist. I think at this point, I'm still an art. I mean, that's what I am at heart. My painting company is definitely my day job. I'm an artist on canvas. That's what I do. That's my hobby. That's what I do in my evenings. That's what all of my guys sort of have, that same sort of mindset. So I lost my track there. But anyway, the colors and I know where I was headed. So you may or may not know of an artist by the name of Chris Stowe, who he's the guy that did the mountainside umbrella installation in California, and that did a matching one in Japan. And he's done a lot of wrapped buildings with curtains. Big, gigantic, worldwide installations. Well, he doesn't go out there and set a 50-foot umbrella on a mountainside. He comes up with the concept, and then he hires a team that's able to uh, yeah, to execute his
Sure.
vision. Well, I
Sure.
kind of figure now with 15 employees, that's kind of the artist that I see myself being. Is I spend as much time as I can as is necessary to meet with the homeowner or the business owner and recognize their vision and then turn that into something that we can do, and then oversee that, bring in my team who all care about it as well, and really execute the vision of the art of a paint job. And your home is our canvas couldn't be a better applicable tagline for our company.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. Now, are your estimates this color consultation? Do you charge for that, or is that free?
No, that's another thing I put in my estimate is that's color consultation, sampling, matching, all provided.
Yeah.
So, we're a higher priced company, but that's the secret sauce that you're getting if you hire Bates Painting Company.
Sure.
I really have a lot of design. I mean, it's natural to me because I paint a lot on canvas. As a matter of fact, I mix uh, house paints in with the vast majority of my canvas paint because that's what I know. That's what I was weaned on is the oil base, Benjamin Moore and Sherwin-Williams oil-based paints. So I kind of work in the popular colors into my canvas scheme, and it really keeps me fresh and current with all the ongoing colors. In addition to that, we work for a handful of top designers in Kansas City. So I'm always around all the color, the frequent, the current color trends. And
Yeah.
that gives me a good opportunity to suggest, and I don't even charge for it. It's just part of my bid for painting your house.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. So how are you getting the majority of your work now? Is it word of mouth referral?
Yeah, you know what? I would say the vast majority is word of mouth. Even the days that my painting company was substandard, I always was very well respected because as a business owner and as me, Doug Bates, I always made sure that we got it right in the end.
Sure.
So word of mouth has gone a long, long ways in Kansas City, and it does everywhere. But the other thing that I will mention is we came up with a good logo that says your home is our canvas, and paid to have my autograph embellished into Bates Painting Company. And we've wrapped 4 trucks with that logo and that your home is our canvas. And I tell you what, I have got probably more positive feedback and calls off of people that have noticed our brand name on our trucks than anything that I've ever done marketing wise.
Wow. So the wrap trucks has been a bit of a game changer then.
I'd say it's been a huge game changer. We have a nice website that we had put together.
Sure.
And then the ongoing organic word of mouth is probably the number one thing. But the wrap trucks, if I was going to tell somebody that's getting out there, getting a start, that's a killer. And what I do, I don't own the trucks. I offer a monthly stipend to my guys if they'll buy a white truck and wear my wrap. And so it's kind of like, you can do that for a lot of different companies, but I offer enough that they take me up on it. So now there's 4 of them around the Kansas City area.
Wow. Do you mind sharing what you offer for that?
Yeah, I offer $150, $300 a month.
300. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So then they just, for as long as they're working for you, as long as they're.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit more to it than the wrap truck. They've got to have a ladder rack and they've got to be able to haul things too. So there's a little bit more to it. But basically you can, there's an insurance way that you can keep that protected. And my wife, like I said, I'm the majority of the front office, but my wife is my office administrator, and so some things I don't even know that she knows. But yeah. I know that it's important in hindsight to make sure that you're covered in every possible way insurance wise.
Yep.
So the value of a good night's sleep, that's what I call it.
Yeah, I love that.
So you don't want to get out there and be uninsured in any way.
Yep. So what's your role now? Are you primarily then training the guys, or what are you doing day to day?
That's a great question. It's kind of hard to pin it down, but I do the vast majority of the estimates.
Okay.
So I'm running 15 guys with my wife as the office administrator.
Okay.
And I really don't have another field person, although I'm probably right on the cusp of adding another person that's not painting full time. I have a couple of guys that do estimates for me as needed, but basically the majority of my time is sales and estimates, and then I try to have 4 or 5 crews that are really well managed, so that I have 4 or 5 really good crew managers. But I end up going by the jobs, more than I probably should. But I just like to I like to know what's going on. So
Yep.
just like doing an art installation, I like to make sure everything is just the way I sold it.
Yep.
So estimates and management are kind of my combined what I do now.
Sure. Yeah, the quality control. So you've obviously grown quite a bit recently, for such an established painting company. You're entering new territory here. You've broken past 1 million. What are you finding to be the most challenging with this new scale?
Well, I tell you what, continuing to expand the company and just keep up with the demand that we've created. I mean, I read a book, I think it was in a book called Good to Great, which is probably the best book that I've ever read in terms of being a business owner, by what's the author? Jim Collins. And he talks about the flywheel. And so once you get the flywheel spinning, it takes a long time to get the flywheel spinning, but then once it spins, it's got momentum, and then it's just going to keep spinning by its own momentum. So continuing to keep, at this point, I have 15 painters and I could use 20. So that word of mouth hiring new painters is that's difficult. That's probably the most difficult, is adding painters to the staff. The second thing is trying to figure out a way by which to add another person that's not a painter, a helper to me, another manager / estimator, and plugging that in. So as I continue to grow, which we're forecasting for about 1.2 this year, we're probably going up about $200,000 a year since we've kind of reinvented ourselves.
Yeah. So how are you, when you have your employee, and you are running W-2 employees, right?
Yeah, you know what? And I talked about, and if we want to go back 42 years, I will tell you everything you could possibly do wrong. But yeah, I'm all W-2 now. And I see the advantage in 1099 and subcontracting work. But it's really been important to me to keep my Bates Painting Company label on all of our work. And there's subcontractors that can do your type of work, but it's just a slippery slope, because it's hard to get a guy to come back and redo something and redo something and redo something until he's got it perfect, for you. When he thinks it was perfect, 6 hours ago.
Sure.
So that's the thing. That's the slippery slope of 1099 versus W-2. But all my guys are hourly paid employees, and we have a couple of bonus structures set up. But mostly, I want to make sure that I can get the finished product is just like I have in my mind, in my vision, and sold to the customer.
Sure. Do you have any incentives or bonuses or anything that you pay employees who successfully recruit other artists to come be painters for you guys?
Well, I can't. Yeah. Were you sitting in on this morning's company meeting? Yeah, we just talked about that. And I think I am going to offer maybe even like a $500 bonus if you can bring somebody in that lasts 2 months or something like that. Because I'm in a desperate hiring need now. And I think part of it is just the success of my company now that we have we have a solid management structure, but I'm just trying to be competitive with whatever's out there. So rather than just waiting for your friends to come along, try to get my guys to go out and recruit. And I'm trying my best too, to kind of to bring them in. But I'm glad you asked that. I think that's the direction we're going to go. Maybe a $500 bonus if you can bring in a guy that lasts 2 months.
Sure.
Something along that nature, because we're in a place of expansion. I think the housing market is so strong, nationally, that it kind of affects every facet of the housing market. So people that all of a sudden their house is worth $200,000 more than it was 2 years ago. All of a sudden they can really validate spending a lot of money on redoing their kitchen or painting their exterior or whatever. It's just a strong housing market affects every facet of construction in my 42 years experience.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think you obviously definitely have the experience to know. So what advice, you say you've made kind of every mistake you can make. A lot of companies listening have been around for a lot less time than you've been around. Mm-hmm. What are some guiding principles, I guess, some ways to avoid some of the biggest mistakes that you've made, some of the biggest pains that you've had to endure?
Gosh. All right. So here's one thing. I could tell you so many anecdotal stories. So let's start with one of those.
Sure.
Being self-taught. All right, let's go all the way back. I'm fresh out of college. This is back in the early 80s, mid 80s. They didn't have any internet. You know what you learned about painting, you either asked at the paint store or asked another painter. And I'm all about sharing with other painters. In my opinion, there's plenty of work out there. It's just trying to figure out how to manage it. So I love this. I love what everybody else says. I love what guys around Kansas City have to share. A couple of my competitors are good friends of mine. Anyway, where was I? Lacquer. All right, so I heard a guy talking about stripping lacquer, and I've had to strip a job before. But let me tell you about the very first time I ever sprayed lacquer. I've got a job for painting in the insurance office. It was a small office, no bigger than maybe, I don't know, 1,200 square foot. And this guy wanted his woodwork stained and lacquered. Well, I didn't even know what lacquer was. I'm seriously self-taught and just out of college. And I had a little bit of familiarity with paints from my art background, but I didn't know anything about anything. So I bought a spray rig for this one job. And I decided that I was going to go spray this lacquer on the weekend because I didn't want anybody else there. The other construction trades on this small insurance office remodel. I didn't want them to know that I didn't know what I was doing. So I got it all ready and I got everything taped off and I was ready to spray the lacquer with my brand new spray rig. And so I start spraying this room and I mean, the lacquer's going on good and it isn't 10 minutes. And I didn't even realize that you are supposed to wear a respirator mask to spray lacquer. It's a super harmful fume that comes out of lacquer.
Yeah.
And in a closed-in area, without a mask, you're doomed. So I sprayed as far as I could, and I thought, I can't go on. I mean, I'm by myself on a weekend out in this back parking lot after spraying lacquer for about 45 minutes. Seriously, no longer than that. I thought I was going to die. So I called the paint store and I said, "What's wrong with this paint?" I said, "I can't even breathe it." And they're like, "Well, you dummy. You can't spray lacquer without a respirator mask. What are you thinking?"
Yeah.
And so that's how self-taught I am. I mean, another thing that I figured out is it's super hard to break from the field to the office. So you've got to have X number of guys doing X amount of work before you can afford to pay, a guy that's not actually producing painted work. And I found that at about 7 painters. So I think I could run a company off of 7 painters with one office guy. Now I'm running 15 now, but that's also, I've got my wife working.
Sure.
I think that was a slippery slope for me because as long as you're out there working with them every day, you're getting great work. Sometimes you're getting twice as good a work out of a guy as when you're not there. And so I just think every painting company owner that I've talked to faces that same struggle. As soon as you're checking on the job once a day rather than being there 8 hours a day, that's just a tricky situation. Hiring good help is a blessing.
Yeah, so your numbers start to slip a little bit there.
They do. I mean, I'm seriously, I heard about a guy talking about how much more effective a guy was pay subcontracted rather than as an employee. And I get that. I mean, essentially, I've been subcontracted my whole life. I never got paid hourly. I'm always calculating the cost of the job.
Right.
But painting hourly is a little different. And you've kind of have to lay out an amount of work or an expectation of work that can be repeated, 5 days a week for the year. You can't just go blow and go everything and then get your money and then move on to the next job. So you kind of have to manage everything differently when you're the only one getting paid by the job and everybody else is getting paid by the hour. So you sort of have to empathize with that or understand that mindset.
What has led you to decide that the W-2 route is the path for Bates Painting?
Well, the primary thing is to keep all the taxes straight. So I 1099'd everybody initially. Initially, as I learned how to run a painting company and just hired friends of mine, everybody was a 1099. In fact, I didn't even pay anybody hourly. We used to just split up the job at the end, and I would divide the percentages of the job between the guys that were working, and I'd just take a little bit higher percentage than everybody else.
Sure.
So in fact, all the way back to the beginning, I would even subtract the labor and even the cost of supplies. So I would, like, if we had to buy a brush, that came out of that job and move on. So it was all 1099 at first, but really there's a slippery slope tax wise between having a 1099 employee and having a W-2 employee. And I can see it either way, but 1099 employee, the problem is they get in a lot of tax trouble if they're not keeping themselves up, insurance wise and tax wise, both. They need to pay their Social Security and they need to pay their own insurance, theoretically. And I just feel like the umbrella of providing all that is all the insurance and all the Social Security is probably been the best scenario for my company. And like I say, I don't want to say I micromanage, but I like to make sure that everything gets done perfectly.
Yeah.
And that means if we have to go back and redo something because it's not as good as I thought it should be, then we're going to do it. And that gets slippery too when you've subcontracted a guy and he thinks he's done and should be paid, and you think he needs to work several more hours to get it to the way you see it.
Sure.
That answers your question. And sometimes I get a little worried.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, there are, I think, pros and cons to both.
I think there are too, and I see the pros. You know what? A great company to subcontract is valuable because it's human nature. If you're getting paid $1,000 a job versus $20 an hour for the job, you're going to bust that job faster at $1,000 than you are at $20 an hour in terms of total time spent.
Yep. Yeah. Aligning incentives. What is the, you talk about how the quality slipped and you guys, ultimately you made everything right. What's the biggest customer blunder that you guys have made and how did you fix it?
Okay. So, gosh, all right. 42 years, there's probably 10 candidates, but I've always fixed them. So I'll go back to another one, a lacquer again. And I'm not a huge lacquer spraying company, but you can see why. So we did a lacquer job. I don't know if you remember, you probably don't remember, you weren't even born yet. Mid to late 80s. All right. There was white stain that was super popular. In fact, it's probably coming back. So you used to stain this wood white and then you'd lacquer it. But there was a special lacquer that you use called water white lacquer. All right. So I was actually doing an architect's office and he wanted all this white stained wood. This is a pretty big job too. So back in the mid 80s, it was a big chunk of work for me. And so all this wood had to be white stained. All right. And then it had to be lacquered. So the lacquer, they make a lacquer that's clear, that doesn't yellow. All right. That was called water white lacquer back in the day. I don't know what it's called now. Probably you'd use an acrylic product, or an acrylic lacquer. But anyway, back then, I just used the lacquer the amber colored lacquer that I'd always used. So we get that all stained white, sprayed lacquer, fine finished, and it was just had this, greenish gold cast because that's the color that the non-clear lacquer is. And this was in an office building downtown Kansas City. I had to go back in there and strip all of that lacquer off and then redo it the right way. and I probably got 10 stories that rival that one, but I'll never forget that because that was a pain.
Yeah.
But I've always seen it through. I've lost a lot of money on some jobs like that, but I've always stayed there to get it right.
Yeah.
So I take great pride in that.
That's excellent. So one of the things you guys are struggling with, probably the thing you're struggling with most now, is keeping up with the demand, because you've created that flywheel effect. What would you say is going the best? What are you guys knocking it out of the park with right now as a business?
I would actually say that probably the best thing as a business that we're doing is color consultation and color placement. Aside from that, Donna, remind me.
No, the way that you structured the company is the best thing you've done ever.
Yeah.
That's what's really working for you.
Yeah. As a business, probably the way that I have the company set up is going the best. And day-to-day work, probably the colors that people are now that I'm offering the service and it's getting out there, there's people that are calling me just to come and pick their colors for them. And I couldn't, I think I'm speaking as the artist. I couldn't be more proud than when somebody comes and lets me really just throws it open and says, hey, I trust you, pick these colors, pick these sheens. And that, to me, that's what blesses my spirit. I think probably why we're the most successful is because the way we have created a structure for the business, but that's not necessarily what blesses me the most. I never have really been like, I think I told you earlier, I'm a reluctant $1 million gross guy.
Yeah.
I kind of never set out to do it. Now that I'm here, I see the advance, I see where I'm headed, but it kind of came, I was always happy when we went over 500,000. I was delighted. Then when we went over 6, I was happy there. 7, so on and so forth. So I just feel blessed by the whole thing. I feel like I'm really, 61 years old. I feel like it took me about 35 years to find out what I wanted to do in life. I mean, I was always doing painting. I was always running a painting company as a job. And just now I feel like I'm an artist. I'm an artist that's painting houses. And I feel like that is probably the overall reason that we're having the success that we're having.
Do you guys have any kind of written company values?
We've got a lot of things that we're kicking around. So we've got a company handbook. We've got some company values. I can't read a mission statement to you right now. So
yeah,
I think
I asked because you have such a strong presence. I feel like I could probably, after this podcast, write a mission statement for your company of some kind because it just seems that strong. And I'm sure it's ingrained within your culture, but it's, we've had a lot of podcast guests, but I'm not sure I've ever felt such a strong mission, I guess, from one company owner as I am right now.
Gosh, what a kind thing to say. And I'm gonna hire you to write that statement.
Little freelance gig here, write mission statements.
I don't think I don't per se have a mission statement written out. I mean, I've got a lot of the policies and whatnot, but your home is our canvas pretty much sums it up as the way we approach a paint job.
Yeah.
I really have a lot of, I was circling back to a question you asked earlier about hiring people. I read an article from that Warren Buffett wrote, and I like to read stuff like that where I'm not that well read or that well educated, but I like, as it comes across, I like to pick the nuggets up where they go. But he said, there's 3 criteria to hiring: integrity, enthusiasm, and intelligence. And he says, by far the most important is integrity, because if you're enthusiastic and intelligent, you're really taking the company the wrong direction many times. So, and I feel like that entirely. Like, I like guys of high character. And I think that I have got a bunch of guys that I almost feel like they're my sons. Yeah. But I've got a bunch of guys that I can trust and that are really doing things the way that I would like to have them done. And that is just, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah. What's your interview process like, when these guys come in to kind of vet them?
I usually vet them with 3 men, and I'm quick to hire because I think a lot of times a guy can bluff his way through an interview, but I don't think a guy can bluff his way through a couple of months of work. So if a guy comes and I just have a good feeling about him, I don't care if he can paint at all. In fact, a lot of times it's better off in my company to bring in a guy that can't paint but wants to learn than the guy that learned how to paint the wrong way. Because some of these guys, it's hard to break their habits. So that kind of goes back to the way I used to be. But I'd almost like to, I'm looking for a guy with high integrity that I just have a good feeling about. And anything else, if he can get there, if he's willing to work, if he has a good attitude, that's 75% of it. I'd take a guy with a good attitude over a guy that can paint good, assuming that it's acceptable. Because those bad attitudes, those bad apples spoil the whole bunch in a hurry. Whereas if a guy has a good attitude, at least he's keeping things moving. And eventually, if he's not cut out for this, it'll work itself out soon enough.
Sure.
So anyway, back to the interview question. I bring two of my top guys in with me. So we bombard a guy with 3 guys. And then usually I just get a good feeling so it's way more about, it's not about them testing themselves, but it's always better if they're available. So you can hire them and say, hey, go start tomorrow and we'll have you work with this guy. And then we'll see we'll check back in 30 days or whatever.
Yeah. Awesome. What changes do you foresee in the painting industry moving forward, or do you see the industry changing?
Well, I saw this on the questionnaire, and I think that I'm, with my vast experience, I've always been big on estimates by appointment only. So the people that want me to do a drive-by and tell them how much their house is going to go, I've always tried to stay away from that because I don't feel like that's my market. I'm all about selling a high-end job, not about giving you the lowest bid out of 5.
Yep.
But I'm seeing more and more, there's people are starting to get the idea that they can get a house bid and sometimes even done without ever meeting anybody face to face. So there's all these, real estate apps and whatnot that you can see a virtual tour of a house.
Sure.
People are requesting pricing on, just without even an appointment. And I think I'm quick to poo-poo that, but nevertheless, I kind of feel like that might be the way things are going. So I've been known to do a bid. In fact, I'm starting to kind of give some ballpark estimates on just Google View based on an address and the look of a house, because if I'm going to do the full meal deal with the Bates Painting Company, I'm going to put a lot into that estimate and that whole proposal. So I really think that's the way that things are going to change. If I can think 10 years into the future, 15 years in the future, there's probably going to be a lot less face-to-face interaction and a lot more online and Zoom and all this, crazy stuff that you kids are so good at.
So kind of
remember when we didn't have cell phones. So
yeah. So kind of that technology.
I really think that's going to be a part of every painting company moving forward, and probably not too far from now.
Yeah. And that's been a theme that's come up again and again in the different episodes of this podcast, is embracing technology. And kind of how it hasn't come up as much as the way you're bringing it up, which is really in conducting the estimate and the sales process and kind of the ease of use for the homeowner. We get our Uber Eats and our Amazon, and Walmart now does $99 and you get free deliveries for the year. I feel like I don't have to step out of the house ever again.
You can hire a painter. Hey, take a picture of your living room. I'll give you a quote. We'll come out and do it next week.
It's just all done. I'll walk out of my house. I don't know. Maybe I'll go outside in 2 months from now, whenever I feel like it, and there will be a new paint color on the outside. It'll be great.
You know what? I mean, based on after 42 years of doing bids, I mean, seriously, I can do a lot of them from the street. It's really more about the feel of the job and the feel of the depth of which they want that job done.
Sure.
Than it is the square foot or counting windows or counting doors. That was great when I was young, but it's kind of all more experiential now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you have any other advice, any other thing you'd like to add for any of our listeners?
Okay, yeah, I do. I made some notes. So
all right, it's your time to shine.
I'm old time guy, right? So I make sure that I return every single phone call every single day. So I don't clock out at the end of the day.
Yep.
And my end of the day might be 5 o'clock, but I make sure that I've returned every phone call that I received that day, every single day, and text. And then even emails, I may not return every email, but I return every email within 24 hours. So I like to get everything, Mark Cuban, he's the same way, returns all of his emails every single day. So I like to keep that precedent because I think people really appreciate that. I like to make sure that I get an estimate turned over within 48 hours. So some people give an estimate on the spot. I usually kind of resonate on it and send them a page of details.
Yep.
I like to make sure that they get that promptly, because when the person calls you for an estimate, more than likely they're ready to hire. They don't start getting painting estimates till they're ready to have a paint job done.
Yep.
So that's another thing. I like to get the estimates in promptly. I like to, gosh, I shouldn't have wrote all these notes, right?
That's great, man. Keep going.
When I do an estimate, all right, get this. This is good. I wish somebody would have taught me this. When I do a walk around the house with an estimate, interior or exterior, with a homeowner, I try to clue in on key things that they say. Like if they call a corbel, or if they call a brick molding a window frame, I like to cue in on the keywords that they say and then write that as a detail in my estimate. So a lot of estimates are just checklists. Sure. I like to line itemize what we're going to do, just, without being too wordy. And then in the notes, I like to include all, like they say, persimmon tree must not be trimmed, or persimmon tree trimmed away from the house. I like to regurgitate that right back in writing so that they know that I listened to them and I paid attention.
Yeah, that's a big differentiator. That's a gold nugget if there ever was one there.
Last thing. I like to set up my Monday morning on Friday afternoon, and then I like to clock out and close down from Friday afternoon until Monday morning. So I know in this day and age, and to be honest with you, I'm always available by my cell phone. So I don't really do it, but I've tried to preach that to my guys to listen. Unless there's a limb that's missing from a body, or the severe bleeding, I don't want to be bothered over the weekend. If it can wait till Monday, bring it up on Monday. I think that's important, because you can just get overrun by running a painting company or any kind of company. I think It's just important to me to observe my Sunday as a Sabbath, and to spend all the way from Friday evening to Monday morning off work.
Yeah, and that's how you last for 42 years, right there.
Well, yeah, hopefully I got a few more in me. Like I say, I'm going strong now. I'm really enjoying what I do. And what they say, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yep.
It's just now becoming fun to me. So I don't even think about how many hours I work. Man,
that's amazing. Doug, thank you for this. This was invaluable. Really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all that. You definitely have a unique perspective. Definitely a longer timeline than most of our guests here. Thanks, man. This was amazing.
Hey, Brandon, it's my pleasure.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.